sweet friends. Happy Monday. Here we are. We're ready to do a project. You know, I was this close to saying, you know what, I don't think I'm going to do a live today. But then Shirley, didn't I just like, oh, but wait a minute, I have this idea. Yep. I have this idea. And I just couldn't resist. I had to. So, you know, our friend Mara, Vintage Retail Therapy by Mara, has this amazing stencil release, Winter Traditions. Winter Traditions. And it has some beautiful evergreen branching going on. I'm kind of excited to use this. We're going to start on a board. I'm going to show you how I'm going to lay that background. All of a sudden this thing clicked in my head and it's like, let's try creating a background that we will layer up. I did just a little mix of Fusion Algonquin and Fusion Oakham. I kind of mixed them up on the plate and then I brushed it on. So you can see there's some streaks of that brown paint in here. I see a little bit of the texture. If you could feel this, it's very textury. That is a good thing. I want that for this next step that I'm gonna do. And I promise you, later, as we develop this, it's gonna have some glazes and different things like that on it to really give this some great dimension. This is Victorian lace. I have a credit card here. Well, spent, used gift card. I wanna dip the end of the card in, and then I wanna remove the excess. I want hardly any paint on here. Do you guys remember when I did that birch bark technique last year? This is very similar. I'm just using, instead of a light background with the dark skippity paint, I'm doing a darker background with a white skippity paint. I'm gonna get a feel for this. So I'm gonna go straight, almost straight up and down first, because I don't want to pull a lot of my paint off of here. I just want it to kind of lightly skip across the surface. It's just going to add some texture. Again, I'm dipping the end of the credit card in a little puddle of paint, and then I'm removing all the excess. Skippity paint is when it just kind of lightly skips across the surface. So we're going to start here. I'm holding this almost upright with a light touch. I can always add a little pressure, but I'm just pulling that little bit of paint that's on my card. When you put paint on raw wood, what will it do? It will lift the grain and makes it feel a little bit rough. So I have not sanded this smooth. I want that raised grain so that it catches that little bit of paint that's on my credit card. And you know what they say? You gotta know when to stop, right? I'm about to stop. I can always come back and I can add more later if I want to. I'm gonna stamp with Barnwood planks in a dark color on this. This is ash paint. I always start with this guy right here. This is in the Barnwood planks, and I always start with this one because it has these ridges right here that create the separations between the stamps. I will take a brayer and I'm just going to brayer. It doesn't matter to me if I get complete coverage on this. I want to start kind of over, not quite to the edge, and down off the edge, and then press that into place. Get some more going. You don't want to get a lot of paint on there because it can really glob up. And then I'm going to line it up. And I made a big smudge, but that's okay. That's okay. So I'm gonna flip it and stagger these. And I want this to be so subtle in the background. I'm gonna take a few of my narrower strips, like that. We want this guy. It's a little more planky looking, right? Now let's take just one or two of these guys. All right, and I'm gonna do, I think I'll do one right here. All right, fine, I'll do one more. Even though it's probably gonna be covered up. I'll put one there, and all right, fine. I'm gonna do one down here too, way down. My favorite rules to remember here at L&J Goods is we don't do perfect because none of us can do perfect, and there's no crying at L&J Goods over crafting. And the 10-step rule, which is when you're looking at your project 10 inches away, it's going to look very different from when you look at it from 10 feet away, right? And it's, oh, I thought I had paint on my arm and it's my tattoo. Keep that in mind. We're right on top of it, and we're seeing every little detail, every tiny smudge, everything to us that looks like, oh, I slipped. Oh, I didn't get enough paint there. Oh, this doesn't look right. But when you begin to add all the other layers and all the other textures that go on top of this, because this is only the beginning, this is the very background, it's going to start to build upon layer upon layer, and trust me, nobody's going to see that smudge. Nobody's going to see that maybe you went wrong, or oh dear, my stamp didn't have enough paint on it in one section. You're not going to see it. I promise you, you're not going to see it. Let's take this stencil here, and I'm just going to work with these two evergreen, the little evergreen parts here. I'm going to start to layer some background shades, and I have chosen, this is Fusion's Everett, and it's a very, very deep, dark, moody green. We're going to be stenciling now, and let's give Mara's stencil a try. And when I stencil, I only need a little puddle of paint. I do not dip my paint into the jar. I take my stencil brush and I work out of a very small puddle of paint, or I even work out of the cap. I rather build my layers. And then I'm going to do offloading. I know this is very basic for most of us, but it always bears repeating because even I forget. I get anxious and I hurry myself and I'm overloading my brush. Every time that I put brush in my paint, every time I put paint in my brush, the other way, I'm going to offload. So I'm going to swirl it. What this is doing is it's distributing the paint around this, and it's also removing the excess. Remember, I can always add more paint over it. I want to bring my pine branches like up here and over here. All right, so it creates kind of a framed effect around part of this. I still don't really know completely what I'm going to do here, but I'm going to do something. I want to make sure that I lay some deeper, darker greens before I start to build other layers on top of that. So I decided, I'm going to use Everett. Let's use Everett. Okay, and we're just going to start to add shading, shadowing of that pine branch. Lay a base along this edge and along the top. I really like this. It's so pretty. But notice how I'm not using both branches. I might be just using one. I'm kind of mixing it up a little bit. Let me change the direction just a touch. I'm gonna do as much as I can right now with this side of the stencil. When my paint dries, I'm gonna flip it over and I'm gonna add a few sprigs in the other direction. And just try to imagine in nature, like how a pine tree grows. And if I were to capture a picture of it with my camera, what would it look like coming into the screen of the camera? That's what I want to see. We're gonna come down this way. Every time I dip into the paint, I'm going to offload. Love it. Do we love it? That is cool. So now I want to add just a little bit of glitz in the background, a little shimmer. You know what? Here I am doing gold, and Megan is not even here to prompt me. I'm going to be adding a raised stencil with some modeling paste. I've never done this before, you guys, so here we go. Let's see if I can make this happen. What's going to happen if it doesn't work? I can wipe it right off. So this is the Pentart modeling paste, and I'm just going to pick up a little scoop of this with my silicone blade. And these are really thick stencils, so they work great for creating a raised texture. And I'm just gently pulling my blade with that modeling paste up over. Well, well, well. I gotta be really careful that I don't lay my stencil into that wet modeling paste. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, and was that ever fun. Well, today we're gonna finish it off. I wanted to wait until the first raised stencil was down before I added a second layer of raised stencil, just so I didn't rub my stencil into the wet medium. Then I came back and I added another few branches with the modeling paste. Here's what can happen if you're not careful, and I did it. So see how smudgy smushy this is? Right there, right here. It just doesn't give a really perfect impression because my stencil is raised up, and I really didn't take that into account when I did my second layer. So you just want to be careful.
But that's great.
Cautious.
You made that mistake, and that
I did.
Can know better.
But again, I mean, I'm seeing it up close, but honestly, when you put it far away, and by the time I'm done with all of the texture on this, it's going to be just fine. We're going to do this little technique right here. My dear friend Gia sent me a little video to show me how she makes these raised letters. I think that's a really cool element, and it's got that little raised edge there. We're going to do these with paper clay, but check it out. Like, I'm thinking, like, I'm going to frame that out like this. Right?
That's so cute.
Right? I'm going to then use a little bit of my Fusion Conservatory paint. I'm making a glaze with the liquid patina. I want to get my brush a little bit wet. I'm going to go into this glaze mix. I'm laying this glaze down over my pine branches, and then I'm taking this damp microfiber. I'm going to blot this back. I'm just kind of mushy blotting it kind of in here. I'm using this as a glaze because the glaze makes it a little more transparent. It'll kind of let the other colors show through. I'm going to at least get this green on here. This is just straight up air dry clay right here. These letters are really fun because you can add rust texture to them, or rust patina. You can add texture to them. You can do all kinds of cool stuff with these. Let's grab some air dry clay. I'm rolling out my air dry clay to about 1/4 of an inch. Here is my letter. This is from Typesetting. This is the textured side. This is the side that you would stamp. Lay that down into my clay. Press this in. Make an impression of that letter J.
Mold.
Trim 16 to an 1/8 inch way. We're going to trim around our letter. I trimmed right around the outside of my mold, about 1/8 of an inch. I just use my finger to kind of, you know, soften the edges and clean that up a little bit. I'm just gonna get some of my dark and decrepit around these letters so I can let that color kind of sink into the little cracks that I have developed from in the clay and the little bit of built-in distressing that's in the clay. Let me show you some ways that you can embellish this sign, this little vintage kind of goldish frame, and I'm just gonna put that right here. But oh my gosh, there's just so many possibilities. Look how pretty this looks if I wanted to just keep a very monochromatic look. Now these I would definitely add some diamond dust. Let's just add a few of these dripping down. Look how pretty that looks. Isn't that beautiful? We can take it up a notch, add here and there. You could decorate this whole stinking thing. Guys, look at this. Come on. Seriously? This is beautiful. Pop this in a gold frame. Oh my goodness. Here's another thing that I might do with this. I might take like my gold pen and just add a little strings, you know, so, as if these are coming from the branch.
Actually kind of like the structure there with all of that stuff going on in the background.
Yeah.
Hey, while you're here today, it would mean so much to us if you would go ahead and subscribe, leave a comment, and click that notification bell. Give us a thumbs up while you're at it.
You guys, I had fun today. This was
So fun.
This was such a fun project.
All of the products that I used today are linked in the description box below. You can also find them at lnjgoods.com or at our brick and mortar shop in Medina, New York.
Guys, bye. And here's where I awkwardly sit here until Megan reaches up. Jingle, jingle, jingle. I can hear the Shirley's ringle. I am Shirley's cell phone. Megan and I made up a song about Shirley's cell phone. And you're right, Paula. These things aren't meant to be looked at up close. No way. You know who gets to look up close? Your dermatologist. If you're doing tiny art, like we want to look up close at that.